Welcome to the Confluence Cast presented by Columbus Underground. We are a weekly Columbus-centric podcast focusing on the civics, lifestyle, entertainment, and people of our city. I'm your host, Tim Fulton. This week, we're diving into the transit transformations shaping our city's future. Columbus Underground co-founder and editor Walker Evans sat down with Parag Agrawal, the Chief Mobility and Infrastructure Officer and Senior Director of Programming at the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. With a rich background in planning, land use, and transportation, Parag has returned to Columbus to help shape the future of our region. They discussed transformative projects like the push for inner-city rail and the Linkus initiative on the ballot this fall that includes bus rapid transit lines, enhanced CODA services, and expanded sidewalks and bike trails. You can get more information on what we discussed today in the show notes for this episode at theconfluencecast.com. This episode of the Confluence Cast is sponsored by the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. MORPC is Central Ohio's voice. As a regional council with nearly 90 local governments and community partners, they provide nonpartisan data analysis, community resources, and long-range planning. Together, they drive the future prosperity and sustainability of the Central Ohio region. Enjoy the interview.
So I'm sitting down here today with Parag Agrawal, the Chief Mobility and Infrastructure Officer and Senior Director of Programming at MORPC.
Yes.
Great to meet you.
Great talking to you. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. So you've been at MORPC for how long now?
I have been with MORPC for less than a year, about 9 months.
9 months.
Yes.
Nice. So I guess for starters then, let's talk a little bit about your background and what you've been accomplishing so far. Can you tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. So as I just mentioned, I have been with MORPC for just less than a year now. I moved here from Central Florida,
Nice.
where I basically managed a MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization in Central Florida.
Mm-hmm.
I basically managed a MPO in Polk County, which is sort of a fastest growing region in the country.
Wow.
Population is approximately 1 million people, which is expected to go up to around 1.5 million in the next 10 years.
Wow. Yeah, that's fast.
Before that, I was the planning director of Prince William County and also served as the community development director of City of Milton in Georgia. So I have a background in planning, land use, and transportation.
Nice.
This is not my first time in Columbus, Ohio. I went to the Ohio State University, graduated in 2004, and then worked for City of Columbus for 5 years.
Okay. Well, welcome back.
Yeah. So again, it will come back, right?
Yeah.
So when this opportunity came in, there are so many great things happening in Central Ohio. My wife is from Dayton, Ohio. So we always kept in touch with Central Ohio and all the great things which are happening here. So when this opportunity came in, I thought this is the perfect fit for my professional and also for my personal goals.
Nice.
So glad to be back.
Nice. And also a very rapidly growing community here as well. Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you think there are things that you were able to take from the projects that you worked on in those other regions that would apply here and get like an outsider's
definitely,
perspective?
as I mentioned, I have always worked in some sort of fast growing regions in the country. Central Florida, which is one of the fastest growing regions in the country. There I basically worked on something called Sunrail, a commuter train called Sunrail, and we are planning to extend that Sunrail from Orlando to the Polk County area in Lakeland. We also worked on Brightline, which is basically the first privately funded train in the country,
Right.
and we were trying to connect Orlando to Tampa via Polk County. We always try to work on multimodal transportation networks. So again, our goal is once we basically grow bigger, how can we grow better? Right? Any growth area should not be known for traffic congestion. So we have to basically keep up with infrastructure so that we can enhance the quality of life of our residents. So same thing with the Central Ohio. As you know, Central Ohio is one of the fastest growing regions in the Midwest. And our goal is how can we basically work with our member communities, how can we work with our various stakeholders to make sure that the citizens enjoy a good quality of life in Central Ohio.
Yeah.
So again, definitely there is a huge linkage with the work which I have done in my previous jobs and the work which I will be working in Central Ohio.
Yeah. Well, jumping straight into that intercity rail conversation, our readers always love hearing about updates on the Amtrak application process. It's something that MORPC, I know, has played a huge role in, but it's a very regional, collaborative process. Is that something that you're helping to work on? Is that within the purview of your role here at MORPC?
So this is part of my portfolio.
Okay.
So as you know, Central Ohio is one of the fastest and the biggest regions that's not served by intercity rail.
Mm-hmm.
And we are trying to work with our communities to change that. So thankfully, last year, MORPC, Central Ohio, and Midwest communities, we all worked together on something called Corridor ID program.
Mm-hmm.
This Corridor ID program is a program of Federal Rail Administration that will basically connect the entire region of Midwest, connecting from Chicago to Fort Wayne, to Columbus, to Pittsburgh. Just imagine, if you want to go from Columbus to Pittsburgh, you do not have to drive, but you can easily take a train.
Yeah.
If you want to, everyone basically says in Central Ohio, if we can go to Chicago in a train, that's the best thing which they can think of, right?
Right.
So again, just imagine how we can basically connect Central Ohio with Chicago and to Pittsburgh through a train connection. On the similar lines, we are also working on a project called 3C plus D. This project is basically managed by the Ohio Department of Transportation through their ORDC, Ohio Rail Development Corporation. And we are trying to connect the big cities of Ohio. 3C, as you know, Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati, plus Dayton through a train connection.
Yeah.
So again, what I will basically emphasize, a passenger rail is not only for moving people, but it's a big tool for economic development. If we want to grow our Midwest communities, if we want to encourage more economic development, passenger rail, freight network is a big issue over here. So again, it's not only about moving people, but passenger rail will also encourage economic development in Ohio and throughout Midwest.
Yeah.
And we are hoping that we should be able to catch a train to Chicago by the end of this decade.
Yeah. I've also heard a lot, there's a lot of projections of value in the sort of visitor and entertainment sector as well, being able to head to Cleveland or Cincinnati to catch a baseball game, football game,
Exactly, right. We
basketball
don't have
game.
to drive.
Yeah,
we
yeah,
don't
yeah.
have to drive.
Right.
So same thing. Our team also went to see Brightline in Florida a few months back, and there we were saying how the private sector can play a big role in passenger rail.
Yeah.
It's not only about Amtrak. Again, so we are basically looking at different models of passenger rail, or what are the different stakeholders that can play a big part of bringing passenger rail to Central Ohio. And we saw how Brightline, which is private stakeholder, is connecting Miami to Orlando and very soon to Tampa. Right? So again, sky's the limit. As long as Ohioans have a big vision, what can happen in their communities, we are here to assist them.
Nice. On the more local level, I know MORPC also plays a really big role in intracity connectivity. The Linkus project, I know, has been kind of buzzworthy over the past year or two. As we're headed toward the election in November, I know there's a lot of work, between now and then. Can you give us sort of an update on where we stand with Linkus right now?
Sure. So I will say Linkus is one of the most transformative project in Central Ohio's history. This project, it's not only about transportation or transit, but it's basically an economic development project. It's a project that will create more affordable housing. It's a project that will basically help to sustain our environment, right? So various stakeholders, that includes MORPC, City of Columbus, Franklin County, and Kota, are working together with our various community partners to enhance the regional network in Central Ohio through Linkus. As you know, it will be on the ballot on November 5th. And again, the only thing which I will emphasize, Linkus is not only about additional Kota buses.
Right.
As we know, we are talking about 5 bus rapid transit lines. We are also talking about enhancing the existing Kota service by more than 45%. And the best part is we are trying to create more sidewalks and bike trails for the residents of Central Ohio.
Yeah.
So around 27% of additional revenue that will come in through Linkus will be invested in creating more sidewalks and bike trails for Central Ohio residents. That will basically connect communities from employment centers. That will basically connect communities with various amenities like parks. So that is the key. So this is basically entire package which we are working on for the last, let's say, almost 8 to 10 years. And it's, as you always know, it's always for the people to decide. But we are very encouraged by the amount of transformation that it might take that will happen in Central Ohio.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting too that that's sort of one planning piece of the overall puzzle, and it's been interesting to see how Linkus connects with Zone N, with the corridors. They're very much in alignment. GCAC has a public art plan. There is the Rapid 5 project, and so seeing all of these different groups kind of plan around and collaborate, I think is really interesting and exciting because, like as you said, Linkus will not just provide better bus service, it will allow for economic development and housing opportunities to happen along Sullivan Avenue and Bethel Road and some of these areas where you don't see as much happening as the Short North or Franklinton.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the best part of these projects is the community participation. Like City of Columbus, MORPC, Kota, Franklin County have been working very closely with our community partners because it's always the community who knows the best, right? So we always go back to the community and say, hey, this is what our plan is. How can we make it better, right? That is the goal. So again, as I said, Linkus is not only about transit. Linkus is about affordable housing. And thanks to City of Columbus, they have, for the first time, updated their zoning code through Zone In initiative for the first time in more than 50 years. That will directly tie into the Linkus project, right? So again, how different pieces are working together to enhance the quality of life of our Central Ohio residents.
Yeah, it's really exciting. As far as programming goes, what do you think the biggest challenge is when it comes to getting people involved in these issues? I think a lot of people care about them, but they might not necessarily know how to best engage, whether that's in person, online, through events. What are those challenges?
So as you said, communication, right? Communication is most important. So I will say I have 2 young daughters, right? 7 and 13. Both me and my wife, we both work. We are already too busy in our daily lives trying to chauffeur our kids to different activities. But we still try to get involved into our community. So number one challenge, I will say, so many great things happening, but how do you basically convey the message to the public? It's not only about Kota Bus, it's about how you can transform the community into a much better place. That's, I will say, number one. Number second, I will say, although Linkus will provide us some great amount of funding, but as we know, there's never enough funding. We are identifying the first 5 BRT lines. We are basically investing more than $250 million in creating more sidewalks and trails. But still, there's so much more community need that's out there. And we want to further work with our community to not only on those 5 BRT lines, but we want to see how can our suburban communities take advantage of Linkus. It's not only about downtown Columbus. This is a project in which our suburban communities can come together and can take advantage of Linkus. So I will say these are some of the main issues which we are facing, right? Community participation, community engagement. And again, although we will be getting significant amount of money, but still there's such a good need, there's such a huge need that we can do so much more with additional funding.
Yeah. You mentioned, having young kids, and I do as well. And the thing that I think is really interesting about these kind of big picture planning processes is that you're not necessarily building for the people of today. You're building for the people of tomorrow and looking at trends, vehicle ownership may decline in the coming decades as people move more toward services, whether they are an Uber driver or an autonomous vehicle. If people gravitate more toward walkable communities again, as we used to have, 100 years ago, do you think that's something that you have to keep in mind when sort of laying the groundwork for this is how things are going to change
Exactly.
20, 30, 40 years from now?
So I will say my background is in architecture. I'm an architect, basically. I'm a designer. So one thing which we always look for, communities are looking for more walkable neighborhoods. I do not have anything against single family homes. I also live in a single family subdivisions, but folks are looking for more options, right? More housing options, more neighborhood options. And I will say walkable neighborhoods also helps in economic development. So nowadays, employers wants to relocate to communities that offer multimodal transportation system, that offer walkable neighborhoods. So it's not only about what you and me want, right? It's more about what our employers are looking for. The idea of the suburban parks, suburban business parks, people are looking for some sort of walkable communities in which the employees can go out for lunch in the afternoon, right? They can walk and have their lunch in the afternoon. So that's the key right now. And I'm very happy to say that Central Ohio is taking a big leap over there. If you look at many communities in Dublin, like Bridge Park, there are many communities which are looking to create more walkable neighborhoods. The Zone In initiative, which you talked about with City of Columbus, will go a long way in creating our corridors and transforming our corridors into walkable neighborhoods, right? Again, if you are basically living along a Linkus line, along those corridors, hopefully you will not have to buy a car. Or if you want to buy a car, you will only have one car in the household. You will not have those 2 or 3 cars in the household. So I will say Linkus, Zone In initiative of City of Columbus will go a long way in creating walkable neighborhoods and creating more housing and more neighborhood options for our communities.
Cool. Well, if there's any way that people want to get more involved, find out more information, get plugged in and be a part of the process, what's the best way for them to do that?
So I will say thanks to our communications team, which MORPC folks, City of Columbus, Cotat communications team, we are all working together to host number of events throughout Central Ohio. We have a very powerful and very informative newsletter in which people can see exactly how this Linkus project will benefit their communities. Thanks to our communications team, we have basically put together fact sheets for each and every community that will benefit from Linkus. So if I'm living in Dublin, if I live in Lewis Center, although we are not part of the Cotat district, but still, if Dublin wants to know how this Linkus will benefit my community, they can go to that fact sheet and it will tell you all the information that how Linkus will benefit these individual communities. So again, our goal is to provide all the information to the communities so that they can make an informed decision, right? Mm-hmm. So we are basically creating these fact sheets. You do not have to go through a 200-page planning document to understand what Linkus is. We have created these 2-minute videos. Our communications team has created these 2 or 3 minute YouTube videos so that you can understand how this Linkus project will benefit my community, right? So our goal is to provide all the information to residents of Central Ohio so that they can make an informed decision.
Nice. And I assume all this is on the linkuscolumbus.com?
Yes,
okay,
yes.
Cool. Nice. Well, thanks so much for spending some time with us today. Really appreciate learning more about everything you're working on.
No, thank you. And I really appreciate you talking to us and being such a big stakeholder in helping us transform the Central Ohio into a much better place.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Confluence Cast presented by Columbus Underground. Again, you can get more information on what we discussed today in the show notes for this episode at theconfluencecast.com. Please rate, subscribe, share this episode of the Confluence Cast with your friends, family, contacts, enemies, your favorite planner. If you're interested in sponsoring the Confluence Cast, get in touch with us. We can be reached by email at info@theconfluencecast.com. Our theme music was composed by Benji Robinson. Our producer is Philip Cogley. I'm your host, Tim Fulton. Have a great week.